For sure.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Choral Living. Tonight we have a special guest, TikTok sensation,
Oh no.
Parker Sedgwick, very active TikToker who loves to debate with the best of them. I've seen you a lot on TikTok. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
All right. So, what is Is there a goal to the show? Is there an aim, or are you just having fun? Like, what is the Parker Sedgwick show all about?
It started out as fun, but I've kind of realized that it's not always just fun and games, especially when you have an ability to like change how people think or how like approach different topics. So especially when you're talking about things on live in front of people, it's really like important how that really affects people's mental and like ability to be like think critically and whatnot. So it's definitely changed more into like um, something where I want to promote like having good conversation, good open like good faith open conversation, because a lot of the times we've socially isolated ourselves because people disagree with us, and that kind of allows us to confirm our confirmation bias consistently, which radicalizes our own beliefs in different ways, which can lead to drastic effects when it comes to like specific ideologies, especially when it comes to like the right wing and like even in some cases left wing, of course.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You put a lot of pressure on yourself. Like, I don't know how old you are. You look like a young guy. We're kind of two middle-aged dudes. But like, that seems like a lot of pressure to put yourself out there. I've seen you because sometimes people will come onto your show, and you can tell right off the bat they don't know what they're talking about. But every now and then you get someone on your show who's like, "Holy shit, this guy knows what he's talking about." Do you ever get intimidated by any of that?
I did in the beginning, but like I've been talking to so many different people, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that everyone's just a person, right? There's no need to like give it this like social hierarchy in our head of this person's like a big debater or has like is credited in this or like could be smart. It's every conversation comes and you can evaluate it when it comes and when it's there, and take it don't take it necessarily for granted in that sort of sense. You have to sort of allow yourself to breathe and allow yourself to have that conversation instead of giving or allowing yourself to seep into the anxiety associated with it because you're scared of a specific outcome. Don't really have any expectations. Have really the only expectation I would set is to progress from the conversation. You're not really losing anything from the conversation. You're only to gain in that sort of essence.
I feel like a handy tool for that sort of thing that you're talking about is going into a conversation, one, knowing what you're talking about, and then two, actually being like an upstanding person. You know what I mean? Like approaching things honestly, I think gives you probably a little bit of, like some bravery because you know you're not going to get caught up being full of shit. You know, you're legitimate in your intentions and everything. That's going to help. And then what was the other thing I said? Yeah, knowing what you're talking about, not pretending like you know something that you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can go into these conversations not knowing about a specific topic, but you've got to understand that you don't know a lot about that topic and go into that conversation looking to learn and take things from other people who might be more knowledgeable about the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about having balance in that sort of means that allows you to acknowledge not knowing about specific topics and knowing when you need to learn, and then other topics knowing when you need to assert your knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yep. I think there's a weird thing that happens sometimes with people where they'll see somebody that maybe does know what they're talking about, or somebody that's like they're actually like a humble person that's willing to learn, but because they're confident, it comes off as arrogance or something maybe to them,
Mm-hmm.
and so they try to ape that behavior, not knowing what they're talking about, and then they get caught or found out for being like a charlatan, and then they collapse like a house of cards, and you're like, because you were faking the funk. You didn't actually know what you were talking about.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that happens. It's probably happened to me. It's probably why I know about that.
It happens with a lot of people because a lot of people form conclusions before they actually find arguments that support those conclusions. And which is like literally the definition of confirmation bias. A lot of people have it. And I think social media algorithms allow for that to be manifested to even higher degree because they make us conform, not necessarily conform. They put us in a system that allows for our confirmation bias to be acknowledged and continued, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, social media platforms aren't any help for that because they just feed you whatever you've been watching. You know, if you like something and you're stimulated by it, the algorithms are just going to spit that shit out at you constantly over and over again. But also one aspect that we talk about a lot on this show is like kind of the attachment of an ideology towards the ego and the identity a person takes, right? A lot of people, they come into these conversations and they've already shot themselves in the foot because they're so attached to their belief system that there's no room for any growth. It's too threatening. So I'm sure you encounter a lot of that because you pick some pretty heavy-duty subjects. Like, obviously, we just watched you for a while. You had one, what was it, something to do with Trump?
Yeah, why do you support Trump? I like to start out like my lives and my questions sort of about getting people to sort of critically think about their own beliefs and why they support specific things because a lot of people have already set those conclusions and I used to think the same way, so I understand that people have already done that and I did the same thing previously. So I think that it brings about better conversation when people understand what they believe in and what also other people believe in, rather than just like forming to our own confirmation biases and our own perceptions of what other people are or what we are in general, which oftentimes is wrong.
Yes. I notice you like to pick one of the subjects as, what is it, prove to me the existence of God. This is how actually
Prove to me God.
We got connected originally just last week. Let's get into it. It's a
I've seen him.
I've seen him.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, you haven't. No.
I'm always on edge. I'm always waiting for it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Those are intense ones because that like really hits home for a lot of people because what people believe about God, the source of existence, usually there's an outflowing from that conversation that the tentacles of that get deep into every aspect of their life because you're starting from like the source point. So people are very committed to that one once they've decided in their mind what they think. Now, you have said, well, at least you told me that you are an agnostic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is an agnostic? Explain for us agnosticism.
So basically, agnostic, at least how I understand it, is forming a basis of thought in relation to religion or in God, mainly off the fact that we don't really know. All of these explanations that we're trying to put forth are hypotheticals. We don't really have enough conclusive evidence to state that I would think God would exist or wouldn't exist. Therefore, since we don't have enough evidence, I would conclude that I don't know. I don't know. I'm open to it. I think it's potential, but I don't know. And I think that acknowledging that we don't know in relation to these conversations about the creation of the universe or something that could exist divine outside of what we live in right now and what's reality for us, I think could start with that.
Yeah, this idea of knowing, again, another subject we talk about a lot on this channel here. It seems that everyone's got a case of knowing right now. They know what's going on. Everyone seems to know. And that I have a feeling that that's one of the biggest problems we got going on is that people are afraid to admit an image of not knowing. Actually, I recently listened to it was I think Bill Maher was on Joe Rogan not too long ago, and he was saying, isn't it nice to just not know? Isn't it just like he was kind of saying, I'm so tired about being around all the knowers, all the people that know everything, because I think there's something profound found in the not knowing, and with the subject of God. You had a good way to approach a question like that to prove the existence of God. What's your starting point? You were saying
to prove the existence.
Well, not to prove. A good starting point in asking, I think we were just saying, What do you mean by God? Might be a better.
Right. So yeah, like so a lot of times people go into the conversation with the stipulation, how do you prove God, or like how do you, you know, and I should clarify, I don't, when we're talking about God, I think earlier I said like he. Obviously, I don't think God is like a he or a she, like whatever. Some people do, I don't. But I think you got to get a little specific when people are pigeonholed into answering a question like that. You know, like what do you mean by God? Like, are you talking about a character, or are you talking about reality itself as God? Or are you talking about a creator? Like, whatever. I don't need to flog a dead horse here. You know what I mean? Yeah, that was the point that I was trying to make, I think, with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think these definitions are like subjective to each different person. Each different person has their own image and form of God, to their knowledge. So I think that just depends on the person you're having a conversation with, and their individual interpretation.
I heard somebody one time say something like, to a bee, God is a bee, or to a water buffalo, God's a water buffalo. Like stating that the only reason humans think of God in this like modeled after man thing is because they're humans. You know what I mean? If of course they think the creator is, humans are so egoic and
Yeah, we're trying to humanize God.
of course
Because
God's a human to gods to themselves, but like I can't see, but if God was like a human, he'd be like a pretty inhumane human, because of all the chaos that happens and, seemingly ostensible chaos. Like things are actually pretty ordered, but what I mean by that is just suffering and things that are out of the realm of like what typically people like or want to invite into their lives, And as the creator of all that, like what's the deal here? If God has got like a human character or attributes, then that's like a cruel. What, he's jealous? That's like a petty, low human. Sometimes you'll hear in scriptures or something like, "I'm a jealous God." It's like you don't even want to be friends with somebody that's like overly jealous, and that's like one of his characteristics. Like that's not even a sign of somebody that's like got a good self-esteem. You know what I mean? No other gods. So it's just funny to me that people put all that on God. It seems like a very archaic way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it comes from our want to like humanize God in order to like feel more connected to God in that sort of essence. And if God did exist, it would just not be in the essence of like a human understanding, because if you really take into account the size of the universe and the probability of other types of life of existing, to think that life would be centered around just solely humans alone, I think would be a little bit ignorant in that sort of essence.
Yeah.
So even if there was a God, I don't think that humans would be at the center of everything, even within that view of God.
What do you guys think would happen if aliens were revealed to be real? Do you think that would change the planet, like overall? Do you think there would be like
Absolutely.
a great falling away of religious people? They'd be like, geez, we're not the center of the universe.
No, I don't think that aliens would necessarily get rid of religious people. I think religious people would still exist. I just think it would change like the fundamental basis of religion in a sort of essence.
Yeah.
But I also think that like I don't think it would like delegitimize God in any essence to the people who already believe in God. To other people, it probably would.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Do you find yourself through any of these arguments getting swayed any way? You must have had a million conversations by now with people. Like what are the best arguments? What are you pulling out of this?
See, I grow from every conversation, so that's why I like it, and I always enjoy like having these conversations so that I can progress my own beliefs, my own understanding of these like very very hard to understand like topics. But I would probably say that. Wait, can you repeat the end of that question again? I want to make sure I get the point.
Have you been swayed to
Oh,
a side?
I remember. I haven't been swayed to a specific side just yet. I just have thought that it'd be possibly like more probable for a higher power to exist. And this would be if you presuppose a few things with like the multiverse theory. If you would presuppose that the multiverse would be infinite, and after that, you would presuppose that it would be possible for a God to exist. If it would be possible, then it would exist in one of those universes. And if it would exist in one of those universes, it would be reasonable to conclude that one would exist outside of the realms of the universe in order to generate that type of system in the first place. So I think that that in of itself would probably be the best argument for God, but we're presupposing a few things in order to achieve that conclusion.
Yeah. There, maybe just looking towards, what we have right in front of our face. Like, we like to give, like Justin was saying, all these attributes towards God. And I'm not saying that this is the case, but the idea that the universe kind of works as some type of infinite mind or consciousness that is kind of like building this whole thing. In Eastern mysticism, they talk a lot about the oneness of the universe. And it's even in a lot of Western traditions, although it's kind of hidden, and Western traditions kind of make a whole bunch of stories. But so do Eastern traditions too. But this idea of the oneness of the universe, that we're like, God is kind of like an experience that we were feeling. I mentioned this to you when we were talking the first time, that maybe God is more of an experience rather than a belief. We're experiencing it, that we're in the magic show right now, but because we're so used to our magic show, it doesn't seem like it's magic to us.
I've heard you say that more than once, and I'm kind of confused by what you mean by, like, is God an experience more than like a belief or an entity? Like, what do you mean by experience, in the sense that like experience as a thing still?
Experience as that which is the case, that which is what we are doing right now. Right now is God.
Right. So here's
There's existence in of itself, right?
Yeah.
So have you thought much about or know very much about the idea of solipsism?
No, I actually do not.
So, like, in a nutshell, from what I understand of solipsism, it would be like, and I'm not, like, it's gonna sound crazy, but I'm just asking if you've thought of this possible option. It would be that you are God, and that the only real experience you can verify is your own. Like, the only thing that you really know to be true is what you're experiencing through yourself, because you're not experiencing life through other people. And the fact is, you're the only one that really truly does exist, and everything else is, I guess, essentially imaginary. Is that essentially what solipsism is? It's like,
yes.
some people entertain this thought, and then they'll have like a psychological break. Like, they'll fall into a funk for a couple of weeks. They'll be like, Jesus, I can't really know that anyone else exists. I might be God. Like, people think that they're God sometimes, right?
Yeah, I would think that that would just be diluted in that sense, because we're making an unfalsifiable claim. Oh, I'm God. No one can, falsify that claim necessarily. So it can stand in your own belief about it, but it doesn't make it necessarily true. I would say that I would definitely disagree with that. Absolutely.
Well, it's not.
I just think that would derive from like.
Group, but as an individual, like, the only point I'm trying to make here is that it is crazy, because you look around and you ask somebody, like, hey, I gotta make sure I'm not I'm not God, right? Inventing all this. You exist, right? And every person will be like, of course I exist. Of course I'm real and I'm here. But you still can't ever really know that they're not just a manifestation of one single mind. Like, one mind. It's not very.
I would think it would be one.
I understand that people would not want that to be the case. I guess my original thing was, I was just asking had you ever really heard of that, and if you had have heard of it, and you already answered that, you think it's just delusion, which it probably is. Like, it's
it absolutely
dangerous thing to entertain.
Yes, it absolutely does. I think that would derive mainly from our individuality, specifically here in the US. I don't think that would probably be a thing in other places, because the way we've individualized ourselves has made us think that like other people are NPCs, or like other people don't really exist. And I think that type of ideology allows us to dehumanize the people around us, which can lead to genocide, which is literally the basis of like fascism.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
We had a little bit of a conversation about that last night. We were talking about NPCs. Uh, you're right on the fact that you can definitely use that to dehumanize people, but there might be something to different levels of consciousness and awareness. Not to say that you should treat people worse because they might not be as conscious as you. That seems a little ridiculous. But I think
that kind of would happen though. He's making a good point though. I think that's like a good point to make. Is that you don't want to maybe play that, especially probably for most people listening, that sounded insulting to them. It's a dangerous game to play because of the reason you said, that it's easy to dehumanize people if you start thinking.
And it's unfalsifiable too. It's nothing that you can necessarily prove wrong, because it's kind of an emptyless claim, realistically.
Yeah.
It's an opinion.
People would probably make that claim off of the actions that people make. Within, they judge an action that people make, and that's probably where that might come from. Or
they can only interpret their own existence.
Yeah.
Because it would make sense that you can only interpret your own existence, but understanding that other people have completely and radically different experiences than you probably will allow you to get out of that sort of loop. And that's probably why people go through like those 2-week experiences where they just like completely change their like fundamental basis of like how they approach every situation.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Go ahead and try thinking solipsistically. You're not going to like it. It's not going to work out for you very long, because especially if people think that that's what you really think, do you want to be around somebody that thinks that you're not real or something?
Yeah.
So, it's not a very good idea.
When it comes to the topic of God and stuff like that, I don't like to get too solidified. I always like to keep a door open for like where I can move in this realm. Especially for you, you're like so young. Like 10 years from now, you might be standing in front of like the next Buddha. Who knows? I don't know. Like,
literally, something could completely change. I could be a Christian again. In 10 years. Like 10 years is so much time where like there's so many different conversations you can have throughout that time. I'm just at like the very beginning of understanding these things.
Oh, you're starting young. It's noble. It's good to start. I don't know. I'm saying you're young. I don't know how old you are. You could be 40.
I'm 20.
Oh, you're really young. God, we're old men. But no, that's good to hear. So what about the stock in like experience versus belief seems to be a giant factor within this conversation when you're talking about God. Like, we can do armchair philosophy all day, but really I think it comes down to experience when I don't know, when I think that seems to hold a big stake in the talking about God thing. I think because a lot of people, through like asceticism and stuff like that, they put themselves in, mind-altering states, and they feel like they've had a God experience. Whether it's psychedelics or, a 6-month meditation retreat or something like that. People feel like they have these encounters with God. What do you think about all that, the whole experience thing? Are you after learning new intellectual concepts? Or are you looking to, like, when you get done school, to go jump into, finding some experience?
I like both. Like, I feel like that's a weird answer, but like I do like both. I like the experience, and I also like looking at it from a different perspective. But I think that experience can allow us to understand these things, at least from how we interpret God and why we interpret God in that specific way. I think that there needs to be a lot more studies conducted about experiences with like higher powers or gods or other dimensions or other things like that that are associated with like psychedelic drugs or like those types of experiences. So we just don't have that much understanding of them right now. They could be valid and they could not be at the same time. I just think that we would have to do more research on that specifically in order to conclude that. But I think that we can look at them now for at least some level of like sway towards this conversation. Like, oh, this could be real. This is potential.
Yeah. No, it's definitely good to have all things on the table. You mentioned kind of like a Christian, was it like a Christian upbringing or whatever? Like, we both came from very fundamentalist backgrounds ourselves, right? So I would say in light of that, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you can do whatever the hell you want to do. But there are some good things I find even still within Christianity, even now.
What's the baby? Baby Jesus?
I don't know. Some of the what's the baby? I would say some of the community-based principles you build within
Don't kill people.
Relationships, the foundation. There's a lot of good moral,
Like the moral principles embedded by the Bible.
Somebody was mentioning earlier. I've been kind of zoning in and out. I apologize. I'm a little tired. Somebody mentioned one of you guys was talking about like religious experiences involving psychedelics. The big thing that's kind of I'm having issues with that is like I follow this one. I don't know if you've ever heard of Leo Gura. He runs a channel called Actualize.org. He's said some very wise things in my opinion in the past, but he's progressively done more and more psychedelics. And that's where I actually got the concept of solipsism from. He's kind of like at the point now where he's like, I'm God. I don't even know why I'm talking to the screen right now because none of you exist. I'm God. And he's big on psychedelics, right? And he's got a lot of sincerity in his voice sometimes when he's talking to the camera. Like he's like, tearing up. It could all be an act, but he seems to have a heart. At least in the past, he's had a heart to try to communicate something with people about the experience he's had on psychedelics. But I can't help but look at that objectively and be like, you're messing with your brain chemistry. Like, synesthesia exists, you can take LSD and, taste colors and see sounds and that sort of thing. Like, your brain chemistry is being messed with. And so somebody coming out of a psychedelic experience being like, I don't know why it's this way. Why in Mario Brothers, when you eat a mushroom, do you grow 3 feet? It doesn't matter. In this video game world, if you take psychedelics, you get to experience God in other dimensions. They're real. I'm telling you, they're real. And we got the timer thing going off saying...
We got 10 minutes.
And the thing I was going to say is just, I can't get past the thing that, like, you're on drugs, though. You are on drugs. Like, I know I'm pre-programmed to have some negative thoughts about that, and I'm not against drugs, man. I've done drugs, but I'm saying at the end of the day, it's like you're taking things that are, potentially making you kooky. Like, he's looking into the camera now and his eyes are all red and he's like saying some crazy stuff that is not popular anymore. It started off as a self-development website and now it's gone into like some pretty radical things. So
Exactly. And I think that derives from having a lack of balance. I think that you can have balance, especially with those types of experiences. People can have those experiences and learn very, very great things from those type of spiritual experiences. But you need to realize that you have to take those experiences with a grain of salt. Not that they are 100% factually real in front of you, because your brain is literally being altered when you're taking these drugs. When DMT is released in your brain, or when you take DMT or ayahuasca or whatnot, you are literally having an out of body experience. This is not something that is something like normal. You are literally tripping on a psychedelic drug, and you have to understand that when you're going into these experiences.
You could
but
be deluded. You could
it could be, exactly. You can't take it as like 100% actual proof right in front of me, because I literally experienced it, because you were kind of altered in that sort of essence.
Right.
Yeah. All right, you might be able to make a debate, I don't know, just as devil's advocate, that, our natural bodies are made up of a chemistry that's doing something like that, and people are born with off chemistries that are so-called not normal, schizophrenics and stuff like that, who might have, who's to say that, we're not all the crazy people and the schizophrenics not the, I know you're going into scary territory when you go down that road.
Insert that word that you said earlier, not repeatable or whatever it is, not double verifiable. I can't remember what you said.
Unfalsifiable.
Unfalsifiable.
Yeah, so when you're making a claim that, you're making a claim that other people can't like falsify. So like when I would be saying like, I am God, that's something I can't falsify. I can't prove that you aren't God.
Right, and somebody who's, tripping out on DMT and thinks they're God or talking to aliens or whatever the case may be, it's, the other thing is like they're the only one experiencing that, There may be some niche situation out there where people have had like a telepathic experience on drugs. I don't know. It's not falsifiable, but typically it's like somebody with a subjective experience trying to tell other people how it is, and they're like, there's no consensus on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Did we get anywhere?
in terms of like your debate subjects, what are your favorites?
I really liked talking about like COVID and God. I also have fun talking about like economics. I'm an economics major, so I very much enjoy talking about economics, but people get very bored when it comes to economics a lot of the times. So I sprinkle it in instead of like just like throwing it on people.
Hey, you can throw it
Um,
at us. Is the system falling apart? Are we seeing the end of the
I
West?
don't think, okay, everyone's wanting to say that because we're in like a really like political time and everyone wants to act like it's the end of the world. We're not at the end of the world right now. Everything's not going to absolutely collapse, but we are in a system that I think isn't really benefiting people. And I think people are starting to realize that. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that power is condensing and
I like
continuing
that
to
you said it's
condense.
not the end of the world. I like that positive take.
It's absolutely not the end of the world. It's actually the beginning, right?
Hey.
When we're talking about the internet and the age of the internet and technology where it currently is right now, our entire economy and the way we interact with people is completely changing. Automation and an artificial intelligence are going to completely change how not only we interact with people around us, but how we interact within an economy and like what we look at and what we spend our time doing. When we're not spending our time doing like random ass jobs and meaningless jobs in this sort of essence, we're able to spend time on things that we enjoy, which allows for us to learn at an exponentially higher rate.
I
When you
love
care about
everything that you
something and
said.
when you really like something, you're able to learn significantly more about the topic. You're able to think about it significantly longer. You're able to stay attuned to it rather than doing this mind-numbing, boring thing over and over and over and over again because it sustains in like the economy,
And
right?
then next
That
thing you know,
that
your life's like got meaning. Like, I
mhm.
love everything that you said there, and I get a little frustrated when people go, I don't want robots to take my job. What about jobs? I'm like, all right,
Well,
go
it's
over
because
there then.
we're thinking of it within the framework of the system we live under right now. If
Right.
those jobs are gone, people are fucked over, right?
Yeah.
But in a different system where we all control the systems that we have in society, like through democratic means, and we decide it based upon like what's best for society and what we want to do in specific situations, we'll be able to generate a better system in that essence.
Yeah, like have some vision, people, man. Like
Yeah.
it's not like we are lacking the resources or something like that. We can do it. But I like to hear hopeful, youngsters, having a positive attitude about that kind of thing because there's some crotchety bastards out there that are like, fuck no, I'll never have an auto. Like I'm like campaigning for automated cars. I'm like automated cars 2024. No, not really, but like
Automated cars will save so many lives. People don't
exactly.
understand that. The amount of car crashes that happen on a yearly basis, you would think it's insane if you look at the statistics. So many people die from car crashes, from those types of events, are literally put in comas, are don't so many issues that result from car crashes. The of money wasted every single year on repairing cars and doing all those types of things hurts people overall, and automated cars will reduce that because they're way more effective at communicating than we are.
Exactly. They could run with the same kind of GPS drone technology where they move like a hurt like that. Have you seen swarms of drones? It's seamless. It's a thing of beauty, and it would definitely be safer than assholes at behind the wheel. Like it
Yeah, because
for
let's be
sure.
real here, almost everyone sucks at driving. Like, let's be real here.
You don't want to get
Everyone
sick
like
again.
doesn't look. If you live in California, it's terrible. Oh my gosh. I will almost get hit like 3 or 4 times, like driving to my parents' house. Like it's actually insane.
My dad always told me
Uh,
when I was growing up. He said when I learned how to drive, he goes, "Drive like everybody else is insane."
Literally though, like I'm dead serious. You have to drive like that in order to be safe, especially.
And so
And
I'm
even if
veering
you
all
do
over the
that,
place just in case.
e-
No, I'm just kidding.
even if you do that, you might still be fucked. So
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people there's a lot of worry, maybe more so on the right side of the spectrum. People are panicked about losing their traditions and losing certain things like that, and I don't think they need to worry so much about that. And just so everyone, I pinned you as from California. I was like, he's either from California or New York. I know it because you definitely have like a progressive side to yourself. I've watched your channel enough.
California,
Canada. We're from.
I was a big conservative for most of my time out here in California.
Yeah.
I grew up in Iowa, very conservative as well. So,
Yeah. Sorry, I don't like the label. I'm sorry if I'm mislabeling.
No, I'm just saying, like,
people
from my perspective, or from your perspective, it may seem like I'm very far left, or to lots of people's perspectives, it may seem like I'm very far left. But I feel like this ideology.
Canada. Are you kidding? You're like you're a conservative.
Not even. I'm still a democratic socialist, so I'd still be left wing even in Canada. But all the basis of my ideology and what I wanted with like supporting like families and individuals and more collective ideology doesn't really come from like a right-wing ideology. It more comes from like a left-wing ideology and like social democracy and allowing workers and people to control the means of society. So
what do you think about transcending this idea of being right and left?
I think that would be good.
Like I have very progressive things about me and very conservative things at the exact same time. I don't even know what I would be considered.
I just think that people don't understand what's left and what's right necessarily, because it's not just left and right. There's a top-down sort of system as well. It's a lot more complex of a spectrum than just like left and right. Left and right can give us some basis of like what it is for an economy, but it's not a great descriptor for like the type of ideological beliefs you have in a lot of cases.
It's so like typical though that people would narrow things down to two categories when it's not. It's complex, like you said. But
people try to oversimplify so many different
like,
things.
Joe Rogan's far right. It's like no, it's not.
Yeah, he's not.
Come on.
Yeah, like he definitely pushed some anti-vax propaganda in some means, but like he's definitely not like far right wing. He definitely holds lots of actual like progressive beliefs when it comes to like economics and stuff. So he's definitely it's not just like they're far right or far left when it comes to like them just having one belief that is like that. It's a little more complex than that.
I think another little problem that comes from oversimplifying things like that is that people will put themselves into account. They'll be like, well, I'm not right, so I guess I'm left. I guess I have to like dye my hair blue and get a piercing now because there's only two options. So I guess I'll fight for left. Like
or I'm not right, so, or I'm not left, so I'm right. Like it happens on all sides of the political spectrum.
You know, or whatever the case may be. Like, I honestly think that happens. I honestly think people pick a side and then they may not even agree with some of the things the side says, but they make themselves go along with it. That's got to happen at some point.
It's like picking teams almost.
Right. Yeah.
It's like we support a few things on that team, so we just pick a team for every other thing that it supports, and then we support those things because we support the other things that they support, right. Which makes our ideologies inconsistent. It's actually ridiculous. Yeah.
Things are more nuanced than that.
So what's like the States? You guys are kind of like the beacon of like I don't know, the world. Everyone seems to pay attention to you guys. They love American politics. How do we fix this system? What is like that? Why is it so broken? Because to me it doesn't matter if it's a blue or a red guy running the show. It seems like everyone to me is getting fleeced and
what does that mean? You keep saying fleeced.
Ripped off, robbed. The kid. To me, it feels like the people that are in charge aren't really doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is serving the people. And to me, it seems like a lot of shady backdoor deals to make a lot of rich people richer. And to me, I don't. There is no side to pick. To me, I feel like the whole thing needs to be recalibrated. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. I think that if we had better incentives through like democracy in the workplace and worker cooperatives and things like that, that incentivize workers to have representation within inside their companies and have a say with how the company runs its economic practices, I think would incentivize a better system overall. So it's not just about like supporting a specific subset of people. It's about supporting everyone. It's about being in a collective society, not being in an individualist society, because individual societies may seem to be better in the essence of things, of being able to decide lots of things, but they have negative effects when it comes to social isolation and how that affects people socially, how they interact with people. It's a really big impact because it does create a lot of issues, and
it's a
especially in
huge
relation to mental health.
experiment that we've just run doing that. But I am definitely on the side of, and it's kind of I understand why people are a little frightened by this concept, but I'm like, I get the feeling that the planet's gonna have to go the way of collectivization more likely if we're gonna make it.
So we're talking globalization and nationalism, right?
No, well, yeah. We're going to globalize inevitably. I think that it would be best if we like decentrally globalized in a sort of essence. So we have like an oversight, but we can decide what we want to do in each different country. That would be like beneficial to us. But I think that people will go down a similar route of thinking, especially determining it based upon like what works and what doesn't work. I think people are going to be forced by circumstance to compete in the global market by doing what works. So it will effectively sort of not centralize, but get people to do things together in an effective means that makes everyone more prosperous instead of it being set and manufactured to create a specific outcome. It just needs to be more fair across the board, realistically.
Yeah. And I don't think people necessarily, like the thing that I think a lot of people are afraid of, you don't necessarily need to give up your spiritual beliefs for that stuff. I think a lot of people are panicked about that. They're like, or their race. They feel like the race is going to go extinct if everything goes global or something like that. I think you can still hold on to your traditions and your community pride or whatever the hell you got. I think you can hold on to those things while still being able to embrace the rest of the world, because I feel like if you're a strong nationalist, there's consequences to being an island unto yourself. If you're the most prosperous of all the nations in the world, that makes everyone hate you because you're hoarding all the wealth, you're hoarding everything, and everyone else is like, oh, it doesn't matter if you did it good. If you if you tried to do it honest. If you're just one country that is better than everyone else's country, there might be a problem with that. You're not really working as a team with the rest of the people, and the world's becoming a smaller and smaller place that we need. We're forced to work with these people.
Well, maybe that depends. Maybe the affluence of a country being simply like coveted or causing other countries to be jealous, maybe that depends on how that country operates as a super successful affluent country. You know, like if they're blessing everybody else around them, maybe they won't have jealous countries around them. But if they're like a country that's affluent and they're like, us first, you know, like us first and nobody else, and watch your P's and Q's because we'll nuke you if you step out of line. And I'm not, it sounds like I'm characterizing the states or something like that. I'm not. I'm just saying like, maybe one of those characteristics of an affluent country would cause that. Think of like how you'd be if you knew somebody like that. Who do you want to have the money? Somebody that's going to bless everybody around them with their success, or somebody that's going to hoard it and be a miser, or maybe even do bad with it? That is going to cause people to... I just kindergartened up that whole concept. I made it like, a child can understand it. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I know, I totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you're talking about.
So I think that it's it's like the Spider-Man quote: with great power comes great responsibility. There's actually some truth to that. Well, I don't know. I think so. I think if you don't want to have crap come back against you later, you should be wise with even though you've earned or done well for yourself, you should be wise with it. So that you don't build up a whole bunch of enemies or people just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if we even created better incentives in the market, like I said, we'd be able to spur those practices like inside the market without having some top-down institution decide what to do.
Yeah. Well, you guys, how are things in the States now? Like, there's so many conspiracy theories going on right now. Like, I don't know, like, Is Biden the most hated president of all time, or is?
I don't think the most hated president of all time. I would probably say that Trump was more hated than Biden.
Yeah,
Absolutely would say that. Um,
but he kind of
but
balanced it because there was a
I
lot
mean,
of people that loved him
we're in
too.
a down period right now. It feels like it may seem like it from
We
an
are
outside
definitely
perspective
in a
that like
down
it's like
period
really
here.
crazy, but we're in a down period compared to what we've been through for like the past like 6 years or so. So people really don't want to care right now, and they're not going to care for like the next few months. Um, but yeah, people are starting to look into it more, and it's starting to spur more conversation. But the conspiracies, they've honestly died down realistically.
Yeah.
They were really bad previously, like at the beginning
Conspiracy.
of COVID.
Oh well,
Yeah,
Canada's heated, man. Just so ever like for all the people that watch my show and think that I only have people on my show that support what I believe. Parker here probably is like the exact opposite on like when it comes to the vaccine and stuff like that. I don't know if we're the exact opposite. Obviously, you're very pro-vaccine and all that. Like so, and I got no problem with that. If people who are pro that do what you must, which is fine. I'm kind of on the other end of that. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
I'm
But
just stuck on thinking I regret illustrating the states in a negative way. Yeah, I wish I could take that back.
yeah. Hey, what?
They're
No.
all right, man. I visit the states. Like we
Yeah.
go down there. I go down and visit Florida.
States has
Yeah,
market.
there, I covered my base. Anyway, go on with whatever.
No. Yeah, COVID was a big one. I know in Canada right now, people are like, you probably saw on the news all the stuff that went on up here. It was a shit
Freedom
show.
Convoy.
The
Yeah,
trucker uprising.
it was an absolute shit show up here. There's still a problem. I think we are the only country in the world that the citizens can't leave. Like I can't leave Canada because I'm not vaccinated. But I'm the only country in the world where that's still a law. I'm pretty sure. So,
Base Canada. I'm just kidding.
so
They say?
what was that? What did you say?
Base Canada.
Base Canada. What's that?
That means that like I like what Canada's doing, but it was a joke.
Yeah. So yeah, no. Canada is hardcore. They're about to get. What about digital IDs for everyone?
Nice.
You're good, yeah, because they're about to roll that out. I don't know how I feel about that. There's a lot of like our leaders are hated right now. Like
Wait, what's wrong with digital ID?
I don't know. I don't trust my government that they're not gonna. I know my phone already is a 24/7 tracking device. So, but I'm
Yeah,
just
and you
saying.
already have an ID.
I don't need another government hand in that wallet in that pocket. Use. Well, the problem with the digital ID is that they could start using it for nefarious purposes. People are worried that with the digital ID that they could say, well, everyone go out and get this vaccine, right? And if you don't, we shut you off. You can't without your ID now, which is your driver's license, all that stuff. Now it's expired. You can't use it. Now, before you smile and you like it too much, this is a wise saying: is that don't ever allow someone to create a law for you that you wouldn't want your enemy to have. So whether or not you're
Yeah, see, I
pro-vaccine
understand
or
that,
not vaccine,
but that's not going to happen.
whatever laws you allow for, nothing, Parker, would surprise this government here. Canada is it's a very different from the United States the way they run things here.
Let him say something.
But sorry,
I feel
yeah,
like you've been talking.
no, sorry, maybe I talked too much. Sorry, say what you're gonna say. You want to jump?
No, I wasn't really going to say anything there. I was just saying like, um, I don't know. You say the last point you were saying.
I was just talking
'Cause
about
I was going to
how
respond to the next thing.
they want to use the digital idea as and to make us do certain things, and if we're not compliant, then they shut us out of.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that, especially because they already have the ability to do that. They can limit you from your bank access or like your access to going to specific places already, and they've shown that through the pandemic they've been able to do that. So I don't think that the digital access in that means really gives them any more greater ability or any greater ability to do so.
Yeah, you guys, did you guys have vax passports? And you in California, you did.
In some places,
But not most
not
places.
no one really did it. It was like one or two restaurants I went to during the entire pandemic, that like had a vaccine passport.
Yeah, they were hard on it here. They were really hard. Like it's very different here. It's like I couldn't go anywhere forever because I didn't have a vax, but everyone else was rolling around. But
So then, what would be your reason for not getting vaccinated?
um, it's kind of a long story because it'd be based upon experience, not totally just like I do listen to the science, both sides, what everyone has to say. Um, my personal experience with COVID was that it was not as bad as what they said it was. I know no one who died from it. I know no one who got severely sick from it. I live in the most populated center in Canada, which is the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. It's the biggest, most populated part of Canada. Most of Canada lives in the GTA. Um, uh, most of the people I know who got vaccinated got COVID and were just as sick as me when I got COVID. We all got COVID, everyone got COVID, and everyone was fine. So, based upon what I experienced, I didn't see this severity. Now, there was a bunch of other things that went down during COVID that were really crazy, where the media made like a radical change and got bought up by our government to a whole nother, like, I shouldn't say bought up, but the government used the media more than they normally did to push their agendas, and it was blatantly obvious what they were doing, how they weren't covering anyone who had an alternate opinion than the regular mainstream narrative. They were shunned and cut off from media. They weren't allowed to speak. They were fired from positions for just having an alternate, a different opinion.
Can I say something?
I want to finish a couple other things. You would think that in a pandemic where everyone's getting sick and all this is going down, that hospitals would be getting built. They'd be hiring and paying doctors and nurses and more. Not a hospital was built. Not a hospital was built in 2 years. China, what'd they do? Build a hospital in 10 days in China?
Yeah, do you want to know why it wasn't? Because it wasn't necessarily profitable because hospitals were actually losing money during the pandemic. So people tried to make this argument that doctors were trying to like make the numbers higher in order to make money. They were literally losing money during the pandemic. But lots of places were hiring doctors and nurses, like travel nurses and stuff, and paying like exorbitant rates for them to come work in specific areas. But I want to go back to the beginning point where we were talking about with not really having a positive, a negative experience towards COVID means that I probably don't need a vaccine. So I think that would be a little bit weird to say in this situation because a vaccine would be meant to keep you safe and other people safe around you by reducing the negative effects associated with it. Just because it wasn't necessarily negative towards you doesn't mean you couldn't pass it on to someone else and it could be negative towards them. And or you could have it and get long-term effects from it because 25% of people actually get long-term effects associated with COVID, whether it be shortness of breath, like a reduced lung capacity, heart issues, other things associated with COVID. So like the risks associated with COVID significantly outweigh the risks associated with any vaccination, and especially since this vaccination is safer than basically every other vaccination we've had in modern history. I don't see any reason to not take this vaccination realistically, even if it was mild in your case.
Hey, let me say something because I haven't got to say something.
Sure. Jump in.
Over the course of this whole thing, I've my attitude about the whole everything to do with COVID and the vaccine keeps changing. My attitude actually, I don't know if that makes me not qualified to be a leader because I keep changing my ideas about it. But I would say in defense of, like I just got vaccinated and that's just because I'm going to Greece at the end of the summer. I have to leave the country and so I was like, screw it, I'll get the vaccine. But over the course of this thing, when it started, I had no idea. When we went to the trucker rally and we came back, and I saw the lengths that the media went to convolute and like some of the corrupt nature of how the media covered that, made my attitude about the whole thing evolve a little bit. And I was like, something is going on here. There's some kind of corruption going on. I still don't know for sure. And then I actually do know of some people that were hit pretty bad by COVID. My sister-in-law's got long-term COVID. And I've heard of people pretty much like on their deathbed being like, like my mother-in-law's brother, she claims when he died, he was like, get vaccinated, like tell people to get vaccinated, because he died with complications. He was already sick, but the COVID, I think, put him over the edge.
Yeah, lots of underlying health issues.
Yeah, it does do that for a lot of people, but a lot of people have underlying health conditions in the United States. Like a large majority of the, or not, I don't know, majority, but a large percentage of the population has underlying health effects. So, I mean, that's probably the same thing for Canada as well. So there are lots of people that would be subject to being negatively affected by COVID, even people who aren't necessarily or don't necessarily have like pre-existing conditions.
And
but obviously,
remember that when you see somebody out on the street who's wearing a mask, like it's, you might be quick to be like, come on, that's a young guy wearing it. It's like, you don't know. You do not know if he's got a health issue, or he doesn't want to take something home to his dying granny.
I sometimes struggle, but I never say anything. I always try to remember that.
But the point is, I'm a lot more open now to the idea that maybe we ought to, just everybody get vaccinated. The thing's pretty darn. It's a better idea than your conspiracy reasons. Why not? But I don't know why when we got back from that trucker protest, why the media was saying like, they're protesting potholes, or they're full of Nazis and stuff like that. It's like, it was so creepy the way the news tried to cover up what was going on, and it polarized people. Like, people were getting on to all kinds of different platforms and like insulting these truckers. There are people that are like, thank God for those truckers, man. They fought for some of our freedoms that we got back. Like, now I can do this because, in their opinion, the truckers made it so that certain things would open up. It's like, I don't know what I haven't settled on a definite answer to that.
I'm not an absolute either. I'm not saying I'm never getting the vaccine either. I've never said that from day one. I said, right now I still do not feel convicted to get it. Honestly, here, like, I don't know. I haven't even followed COVID. Is it done yet? I don't know. Like, is it spiking again?
It's not done. It is likely that we will probably see high transmission rate periods in Canada and the United States in the near future. We're in like the same type of period we were previously, with like in between like Alpha and Delta and Omicron. And like these new variants are likely to evade the immunity obtained from natural infection and from vaccination. So yeah, it's likely we're going to see a large spread again. It's slightly increasing, but I wouldn't think that we're at that point yet where it's going to heavily spike.
So
but it probably will be the largest wave.
What happens to me, like, say, like, because this thing evolves and changes over time, right? Is the same old vaccine that they gave you when you got it way back in the day?
It's not as effective against new variants.
Well, there's two types of vaccines, right? Like, my wife searched hard to get, because both of us were reluctant to get the vaccine, but she found the one that's more like the old school style. That's the I'm not.
Oh, the Johnson and Johnson.
No,
yeah.
I don't know if it's the.
No, it's not Johnson.
It's not that Johnson and Johnson.
Starts with a V or something.
Yeah, but essentially it's the old school style where that's what I understand from it.
Like a novovirus?
That's it. I think that, yeah.
So yeah, or an adenovirus. It could be either of them. So I would think that would either be AstraZeneca or it would be J&J, because J&J is like the old one. AstraZeneca is like it's not mRNA, but mRNA would be the Pfizer and Moderna. Those would be the ones that I would get. They'd be the most effective against previous strains. But
that's the one we didn't get. We got the one that's not an MN or whatever the heck how you say.
Yeah. So mRNA, it seems very, very scary, but it's not scary at all. It's literally just like the messenger RNA within your system. It has nothing to do with DNA. It can't change any of your genes or anything like that. It's not gene therapy. It can't enter the nucleus of the cell. So it's only about transmitting information to your body so that you can develop an immunity against a virus. without actually like truly being infected.
Yeah.
All right, good to know.
Huh?
You know your stuff, man.
Yeah. You must.
I talked about
You
COVID. I
all
talked
the
about
time.
COVID.
You would have to, because I'm sure there's people who come on there who got loads of. So what do you do when you got like? I'm sure you've had guys come on who've got like a messenger board full of like stats and their science for, you know. What do you do to like combat that? Because really, it's like one guy's list of science versus another guy's list of science.
When we're talking about COVID, the science that they bring up isn't like backed by anything, realistically. It's like Peter McCullough, or like it's like two people. It's Peter McCullough, or it's what's his face?
Malone.
Yeah, Robert Malone. It's literally Robert Malone or Peter McCullough. It's none other than that. All of the peer-reviewed articles literally say that it's like effective. It's a consensus amongst the scientific community.
I don't know if you get it when you're scrolling TikTok. Don't you see like the Pfizer reports just came out now?
Oh, those are easy to debunk. So like no, it's because it's ridiculous. It's like people like, you know, VAERS. It's the vaccine adverse event reporting system. So it's basically, it's anything that happens after a vaccination is reported to VAERS, regardless of whether it's like a car accident, a heart attack, you're an alcoholic now, literally anything is sent to it. So these are all just like correlations with the vaccine. It's nothing caused by the vaccine. And that same thing applies to the Pfizer trials. They have this reporting system too. So there are like people with like alcoholic syndrome and like random things like that within that evidence that they're talking about is like against the vaccine. So if you look at like the actual causations from it, they are like not significant at all. There's like 2 serious adverse events out of like the 45,000 people that were in that Pfizer trial.
Did you say if you're an alcoholic, you get? Is that what he said?
Oh no, someone reported alcoholic syndrome after getting a vaccination in the Pfizer trial.
What is
So
alcoholic syndrome?
it's just they're an alcoholic now.
Oh, interesting.
I've never heard of that.
That's a new one.
Yeah, so yeah, that's how they put it within the report. So I mean, that's not even like
So,
me
like,
making up a term.
They get the vaccine and then they're like, I gotta get some whiskey now. Like,
Well, no, they were determined an alcoholic after that point, but it's put onto it because it's a correlation after vaccination. So obviously, it has like rationally, it has nothing to do with the vaccination, right? But yet it was still put on the system, right? So I was using that as like a mechanism to show you that it's just correlations on the on that like reporting that they always talk about, the Pfizer pages or whatever, the 9 pages of adverse events. It's all of that's what it is.
So do you find it weird at all, like this whole idea of like this is gonna go on for a while, and what, we're just gonna get needles every year, 2, 3, booster after booster, and does it bother you at all, like with like a lot of people are getting rich on this bad boy? And like, didn't they try, like Africa was like, give us the patent so we can like give it to our people? And if this is about
that's the real conspiracy.
Like,
that's the real conspiracy, maintaining these patents in place so countries around the world can produce the vaccines, which creates the spread of new variants, right?
Okay.
Which could make those companies more money. That would be a real conspiracy. That is with these pharmaceutical companies and what they're doing, not like all these conspiracies about like it's not an effective vaccine, it's not safe. It was safe and effective in order to create that effect in the first place.
So what do we do about, like, if it's really about like getting rid of it, all these countries that are like, give it to us, like, to me, that's I don't know, it just seems something really,
I think we should. I absolutely think we should allow them to produce it. And they didn't do so that Pfizer could make money. That's the real conspiracy at play here, right? That's why pharmaceutical companies are fucked up, right? It's not to do with whether the vaccine is safe or not, because the vaccine is absolutely safe. It's absolutely effective. It's just the company trying to make money off of that. That is what's fucked up.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a fucked up thing.
Yes, I definitely don't like that thing. Whether or not I'll be getting the vaccine, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Get it.
Just
get it.
I got one right here. No. Maybe in the future. But Parker, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This was really great having you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Is there anything going on the what is it? Parker Sedgwick? How do you say your last name?
Sedgwick.
Sedgwick. Is there anything going on in the Parker Sedgwick community that people need to know about? Because I'm going to leave a link in the description for your stuff.
Nothing really crazy at all. But you can check out my YouTube, Parker Sedgwick, as long as my TikTok, same thing, Parker Sedgwick. If you do want to look me up, it's ParkerSedgwick if you want to look me up. But yeah, it was great. It was great having the conversation. I think it was very productive.
A flood of like 100 subscribers, man.
So this channel here, part of our what we're about is, you know, a little bit about spirituality, and spirituality for us is kind of about just connecting with reality, observing it, studying, looking at it, observing it, talking to all different belief systems and stuff like that. So thanks again for coming on. One thing we like to do at the end of the show when we wrap things up is we say, you know, if you like the show, like, subscribe, share with a friend, hit the notification bell, and then everybody, until next time, stay
spiritual.
Peace out, man. See you later.
All right, peace out. Have a great night.